This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, it is brought to you by Bet365. At Bet365, whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is set to join us to talk a little bit more about what the Eagles have done and what they could still accomplish as we get into, by the way, NFL free agency has officially begun. Well, the tampering period started Monday, and on Wednesday, which is now at 4 o'clock, all of the signings now become official. So you're going to start to see teams actually put out that they made these signings. So signings that have been discussed and reported, well, now they become official, and we can legally talk about them. Were we breaking the rules before when we were talking about all these moves? So we've got a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to get into here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash Live. Hey, I want to congratulate Eileen and Rob. They're our latest qualifiers for the trip to Baltimore. So we'll see them at Maynard's in Margate over at our Phillies watch party, which is happening on March the 28th. Phillies and Braves will be opening the season in just a couple of weeks. 2 weeks from tomorrow, the Phillies season is open for business. And, we're looking forward to that. Phillies today, it looks like they put out a lineup. When I saw the lineup today, well, originally had Schwarber leading off. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Realmuto, Stott, Bohm, Castellanos, Marsh, Rojas. Marsh made his debut today. It's the first game that he played. Made a nice play out in left field, really, to start the season. Then Schwarber got scratched from the lineup, and they moved Marsh to the leadoff spot. So you get a situation where Brandon Marsh made his debut. He hit leadoff, and then you've got a couple changes in the lineup, but the Phillies won today. Aaron Nola pitched really well. He looked pretty good. And there. So, all right, we'll get to Mosher here in just a second here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. As another edition of Football at 4 is upon us, and now the league year is officially open. So all of these signings become official, and we'll talk about them now with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds. There he is. Geoff Mosher is here. So all these signings, wow, how crazy. They just signed Saquon Barkley.
Oh, my God. Happy New Year to everybody.
We knew they signed Barkley. We now have the contract, Geoff. Let's start with that and how maybe it changes, if anything, for you, the way this contract is kind of laid out. A lot of people said, wow, they gave change in philosophy, which it is. They still paid a lot of money for a running back, but does the contract structure change the dynamics of this move at all for you?
No, I mean, I knew from the beginning it was most likely going to be, with the guaranteed money at $26 million, it was probably something where it was going to be a 2-year structure. So it looks like a $13 million APY type of deal, 2 years. Maybe there's a little bit of money in year 3. I had the contract, and now I don't have it in front of me. But either way, the majority is going to be in the first 2 years. The first 2 years, I believe, are all guaranteed, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's that. Yeah, not that surprised. It's still more surprising in general that the Eagles paid that kind of guaranteed money for a free agent running back. But one thing that we learned going into the weekend, into the weekend, into the free agent signing period Monday, is just how much Howie Roseman always liked Saquon Barkley, just had a real fondness for him. That wouldn't have known that maybe a month or 2 months ago, or, they obviously had no ability to get him the year he came out in the draft and went number 2 overall. They weren't picking that high. So Howie loved this player and went out and got him.
Yeah, a lot of the things, it sounds to me, Moshe, they looked at, now, the listeners and the fans, they might not look at him as significantly better than Swift or Mixon or Pollard or any of the guys that were available. The Eagles are basically saying they liked him way up here, and the other guys were good, but they're just good. This guy's great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they paid him that way, right? I mean, look at what DeAndre Swift made in guaranteed money, and look at what the Eagles gave Saquon Barkley. So they clearly hold him into a higher echelon, a higher regard. And we'll see. I've done a lot of homework since on Saquon Barkley, trying to get a fuller picture of who he is and everything he brings to the table. And so has Adam. We've learned some things, and there are some narratives out there that aren't all accurate about everything that he does as a running back. We're going to address this with our Patreon members tonight in an Ask ITB live stream and in the podcast. But I would just say that there are some things about him that are good. There are some things about him that can be better.
With his skill set and some of the things he's done, we haven't seen Kellen Moore. We don't know what he's going to do with this offense, but I would imagine that I don't know if they needed Kellen Moore's okay on this, but he had to have been like, this is a guy that I really can use here and maximize.
I mean, I don't think that mattered much. I'm sure he's fine with it.
Okay.
I think that this was Howie Roseman wanted to make a big splash, wanted to get a player that he has coveted for quite a while, and went out and got him.
All right, so let's you got Barkley in the mix. We know that. Now we know that he'll be the running back. By the way, the Eagles number 1 in run block rate. New York last, 31st. Excuse me, they were 31st in the league. So, as Jason Kelce said on the New Heights today, he's getting to run behind the best line in football, and that's a big difference for Barkley. I think we all know now that.
Are the Eagles still the best offensive line in football? I mean, I think that's a pertinent question with that Jason Kelce should answer himself, because Jason Kelce is no longer the center, and at this moment we don't know who the right guard is. That's 40% of the offensive line that's going to be new, and 40% of an offensive line that took a slight step back last year.
That's a fair question. Without Kelce, is the line still going to be, now I guess a lot of this is.
Still be good. I didn't want to sound like a negative.
No,
Nancy.
it's a fair question.
You got a Pro Bowl, you got a Pro Bowl left guard, a Hall of Fame right tackle, and a really good left tackle. But I do think interior, when you have two spots there that are being remade and you don't have a Hall of Fame center, I think it's a question about how elite they can be.
No question. I mean, yeah, you lose him. And I guess because Stoutland's still there, you kind of feel that line will always be top 10 in the league just because of the way that he kind of does stuff there. All right, let's stay on the offense. There are other moves, but let's stay on offense. Devontae Parker, does he do anything for you?
Not really. Nice tall target, 6'3", always been a physical player, but because of that, been hurt a lot. Contested catch guy more than a true separator. Now, he does not play the slot. A 6'3" guy is not a slot receiver. So I don't know. I suspect the Eagles just felt like you're getting a veteran with depth here. And you need depth everywhere. Just because the Eagles need a slot receiver doesn't mean they were great at outside depth either. They really didn't have anybody beyond Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, because the only other receiver under contract that can really compete for a spot on the 53 or in the top 5 would be Britton Covey, and I'm not sure he's someone who projects as a full-time slot anyway. So it made sense to bring in a veteran who can play outside, because if Devontae Smith gets hurt or A.J. Brown gets hurt. But that being said, Devontae Parker has got to make the team.
And obviously, he's a guy I laugh because the Eagles fans love Swift because he had that big game against them in Detroit. Parker ripped him in 2019. That was a game where you and I battled about the Eagles-Dolphins. Remember that, 2019? He had 159 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. And I think that's about I think he's maybe had 159 yards total since that game.
Probably. He had a Kenny Britt-like performance against the Eagles. Remember Kenny Britt in that 3-touchdown, 200-yard game in 2010?
It was crazy. Matt Hennessy is a backup. He has been a starting offensive lineman in this league. Is he a depth piece? Do they see if he could play right guard? Is he a guy that you see as that? Or, hey, we're moving Juergens over, and if Juergens gets hurt, we don't want to have to move Landon Dickerson there. We needed a backup center.
Yeah. Mike, this is the type of signing that, like the football wonky guys like me really like. It's a depth signing. It's a guy who can, because he has started, give you some starting snaps, but most importantly, he's that versatile guy, which they didn't really. I don't want to say they got lucky last year, but Jason Kelce was their only guy who had snapped in a game, because even Cam Jurgens has played center, and that's what he projects at, and he will. But if Kelce got hurt, they would have had to move Jurgens to center, right, and then replace right guard. They hate doing that. So here's a case where if Jurgens now. And I said going into the free agency period, one of the biggest objectives for the Eagles is to get somebody on the offensive line, depth-wise, who can snap the ball, because if Jurgens were to get hurt, who do you have? You have zero depth at that position, specifically center. So he can play center guard. You don't have to have a center and a guard who can't, who you have one who can do both, and that's good. So I imagine he'll make the team, and I think he'll be an important piece of their depth. And like you said, if he has to start, he can start.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. They did make some moves on defense. Bryce Huff, we talked about when that happened. So now you got an edge rusher, and you add CJ Gardner Johnson. You bring him back, and just kind of give us your thoughts on adding him back as opposed to some of the other guys that were available out there.
Makes a lot of sense, but I mean, it sort of reeks of my bad from Howie Roseman.
But isn't that okay? I think that's refreshing, though. Like, people are like, "Hey, you had a chance to sign him last year, you did. Okay, I made a mistake. I'm addressing that mistake by bringing him back."
It's okay. I mean, it depends on how you judge everybody and the mistakes that they make. Are you okay with everybody correcting mistakes, or if it's an athlete? Wait, hold on. If it's an athlete or coach that we don't like who makes a mistake, we get all over them. So I don't know why we give passes and not passes.
Well, this is the problem I have with the position, that position, okay? Look, everybody messes up in the draft, but we go through every pick that you mess up. Everybody messes up in the draft. You're not going to hit on 100%. But, I think and where Roseman has the ability that other guys don't, is that Laurie lets him make mistakes, and then he can fix the mistakes. Some of these other guys, if they make a mistake, they're doomed, and they don't get a chance to fix the mistake. You get 2 or 3 years, you're out. Roseman can make mistakes and then say, okay, I messed up, and learn from it. The thing I give him credit for is he does learn from it a lot of times.
Yeah, he does. I mean, if you look at last offseason in a bigger picture, and you take the Terrell Edmonds signing, the what they did at linebacker versus what they had, what they did at other positions to kind of give themselves a position. They weren't good. The last offseason was terrible. And a lot of general managers who've won Super Bowls and been 10 years into this thing probably, I don't want to say a lot, but I don't know. I don't think you should give a free pass to a guy who's done it for so long. Adam and I have said for quite a while, including last year, I'm not quite sure what the thought process was with that free agency period last year. There were just a lot of guys who didn't fit, and that felt like more like a young GM than a guy who's been through the weeds. But to your point, yeah, I mean, he gets more opportunities than other people in sports would get, and he does tend to correct those mistakes pretty well. I'm not sitting here saying he should have been fired, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing that he rectified the mistake. I just think it's so odd that he stood firm last year on the price tag for CJ, and then this year he went and paid him more money. Well, we'll see when the contract comes out, but nonetheless, the guy played 2 games last year? 4. So it's just a 4 game, 4 games.
4 games and two playoff games.
Yes, yeah. So that's sort of strange to me, but I do think when healthy, he is a very productive player who can help the defense. The only thing I would wonder about is his sort of penchant for being a freelancer. That's what makes him great. He kind of abandons assignments sometimes, and that's why he gives you that great turnover production. But Vic Fangio is a disciplinarian and a stickler, and you run the defense the way I say you run the defense. So it'll be interesting to see how that relationship works between CJ and Vic.
Yeah, and I guess as opposed to signing someone else, it's, hey, this guy, we don't want to bring in too many new bodies. We don't want to bring too many new faces in. Yes, he's new, but he's been here and he knows the guys. And does that play a factor into any of this for him? Because we've heard a lot of people saying this, I got some dream team vibes here with they're just going out. But CJ Gardner Johnson's a guy, he was in the secondary with Slay and Bradbury when they went to the Super Bowl. So
Right.
it's not like they brought a completely new face in here.
No, not a new face. Has played in this scheme, even though Vic wasn't the one calling it, and he had excelled in it. And he does give you great versatility to be able to play the safety and the nickel spot. And I'm sure that skill set will transition nicely. I agree with you. I heard you talking about it earlier in the show. I think anytime you sign as many free agents as the Eagles have, it's going to have that dream team vibe. That might be the only similarity, is that year they just pulled in a bunch of, it was like 6 or 7 guys, right? Between Nnamdi and Jenkins and the running back, Mike Bell was it, and then the quarterback, Vince. Yeah, I mean, they were just signing guys at every single position. This one's a little bit different. Most of the contracts, like Huff, like CJ is still a young guy, Hennessy a depth guy. You only really got 3 starters here so far, and that would be Huff, that would be Saquon, and that would be CJ Gardner Johnson. So I don't think it's dream team, but I think no matter what, whenever you sign this much volume of free agents and then you make a headlining move like Saquon Barkley, there are some there's some intertwinement there. I can see it.
Yeah. So here we are, Wednesday, 4:00 came and went. The opening has happened. Do you anticipate that they want to get more done in free agency, or do they take the foot off the gas and now focus on the draft?
Well, my favorite expression, Mike, is that the offseason isn't done within the first 3 or 4 days of the signing period. You know, some of the Eagles and some of Howie's best signings have come in May, like LeGarrette Blount, right? Or sort of been, like a Chris Long, a 1-year contract. And some of his best acquisitions have been trades going back to Ronald Darby, right at training camp, right at the end of training camp, right? Jay Ajayi at the trade deadline. A.J. Brown at the draft. So I don't know what the Eagles have left in free agency, but I believe the vibe I would get is that Howie is not done taking swings. It just may not be a free agent signing. It could be a free agent signing, but we still have to see how the Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick situations play out. And just knowing Howie Roseman, I'm sure he's looking at linebacker. I'm sure he's looking at cornerback opposite Darius Slay. And I'm sure he's still looking at a safety spot, wondering how he can upgrade it without having to bring in like 6 or 7 free agents.
Yeah, about 10 minutes ago, Josina Anderson tweeting, the Eagles league sources are aware the Eagles are on the lookout for a linebacker, possible backup quarterback. I mean, linebacker is the one where I think a lot of people are still like, well, they've done this and this and this, but they still haven't done linebacker yet. Is that something that happens? Zach
Bowen is really a special teams guy who can give. I mean, he was a 3rd-round pick out of Wisconsin. Usually those guys out of Wisconsin, 3rd-round picks wind up overperforming, but I wouldn't say that about Zach. I think he's a special teamer who can give you some snaps at linebacker if you need. So with Nakobe coming back, let's see what happens with Zach Cunningham. He played well enough for the Eagles. He's going to be out there for a little bit, but. Again, I still think that there's sort of a big swing here, especially with the uncertainty, the future uncertainty of the 2 edge rushers. I mean, if you get rid of both or one, you still need a little bit more, I think, in the pass rush. And I just don't think Howie is done by even a bit. Yeah. I think that there's some more moves left in him.
I agree with Geoff Mosher on that one. So all the moves are becoming official. We see the Eagles tweeting out officially that they have signed Saquon Barkley. He is now a Philadelphia Eagle, officially official, as are many of the other names that you've heard throughout the week here. And I would echo what Geoff said. I think between now and Friday, probably a couple more things that will happen, and we'll keep you posted on Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live. Anything happening with the Inside the Birds podcast? You got some good insight for the people out there coming?
Yeah, we've been having great live streams for our Patreon members, which is patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. And we've been dropping intel specifically for our Patreon members on the live stream. We're doing it tonight, do it every other Wednesday night. And then obviously the podcast will drop in the morning on Thursday. And then we'll get Greg Cosell on our show, The Intel with Greg Cosell, next week to recap all the free agent signings. But I tell you, Mike, one of the things is when you bring in this many players and your head spins, right? Even as you're doing talk radio and all these names are going off. I think what I'm fascinated by right now, and I look forward to addressing this a little bit down now and then down the line, is just sort of taking a step back and saying, as of right this second, are the Eagles a lot better than they were at the end of last year? They've added names, but it would be, I mean, if we're going to say Bryce Huff's coming in, but you're losing Reddick and Sweat, and then yes, you brought in Saquon Barkley, you lose Swift, like it'll be really interesting to see at the end of the day. They're certainly deeper in certain spots now because of some of the 1-year guys, but it'll be interesting if we all like put our heads together and say, is this Eagles team actually better?
Okay, I will answer yes for this reason, okay? Chauncey Gardner Johnson is a clear upgrade at safety over what they had.
100%.
Okay, so even if everybody else is a wash, they're better at safety on this right there, minimally. Now, Sweat and Reddick are still here, and you've added Huff. So at the moment, you now have 3 pretty good pass rushers. You would expect that to change.
Right.
Barkley, I think, is a upgrade over Swift.
I think he's an upgrade at his best, right?
Right,
yeah.
and I'm not saying significant, I'm just saying I think you're better at all 3 spots. The rest of the team's still the same. Your 2 coordinators, you would think, are better than the 2 guys that you had at the end of last year.
Right.
So on that, now, you've lost Jason Kelsey. You've lost Fletcher Cox. So those are dents against you. Marginally, are you better? Probably. But I think definitively more has to be done.
No, actually.
And the problem that comes in, and the problem comes in, Geoff, when you need to do more, is now you're continuing to bring people from the outside and you're incorporating new.
Right. Because, like you could say, a slot receiver, you're not necessarily better. Corner, you're the same, which wasn't that great last year. Linebacker, who knows? Because, I mean, right now you can actually say you're not better because Cunningham played decently, and we don't know what you're going to get out of Nakobe Dean coming off the injury. So it's a backup quarterback. They could be better. By the way, I would watch out for Eason Stick on that from the Chargers. We'll see. I mean, it's weird. They got better in certain areas, but if you lose Reddick and Sweat, then you're actually not better in the pass rush. So it's sort of a fascinating thing going on.
Hey, something we can bring up when you're back on Monday when more moves happen. By the way, the Justin Fields stuff, I don't know if if the Eagles are just kind of waiting. I mean, if they say, hey, we'll give you a 5th, I mean, does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. If you can get Justin Fields for a 5th, sure.
Well,
sure.
I mean, right now, there's no offers. So if I'm the first person that says I'll give you a 5th, do the Bears just say, it's like the guy, the John Travolta, where he's looking around. Anybody else got an offer here? Nothing? Okay, I'll take the 5th here. So all right, we'll keep an eye on that. We got it, Football at 4. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast and their YouTube channel, their Patreon. And, of course, Andrew's here tomorrow, Adam on Friday, just back on Monday. Thanks, man.
See you, bud.
That is Football at 4. It's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.